All right, ready, Peter?
I'll go for it.
Okay, here we go. All right, what is your full name?
Peder Otterson.
And when were you born?
December 5th, 1944.
Where were you born?
Duluth, Minnesota.
Where did your family live when you were in the Kent area?
467 Walcott Avenue.
And how would you describe your childhood?
Fun.
Yeah?
Yeah, the street was loaded with kids. There were a lot of Catholics and big families. And the streets on either side of us, as I think you already know, on the south side was, I'm blanking out, Carthage, where the Paytons lived, and to the north of us was Grant Street, where the Shaws lived, good friends. Bill Payton, Bruce Shaw, and I all were in Scouts together, and our families all went to the same church, the Kent Congregational Church at the time. And I think in the early days it was still in the old building there on whatever that was.
Street.
Which Gaugler Street, yeah. Before they moved it out more on the eastern side of town on 59. Fun.
What common family activities and hobbies did you have?
Oh, the family. Well, being Minnesotans at heart, we and my dad having the privilege of being a college professor, having the summers off, and my mother in the latter years, she was a fifth grade, I think it was. Fifth? Yeah, fifth grade teacher at Rootstown, I think, school. And so teachers have the summers off. We'd be out of here, we'd be on our way to Minnesota. We had a camping trailer, a really old trailer that eventually got donated to Roosevelt High School, which is where I went to high school. And it was used as a hot dog stand at the football field. Maybe still there, I'm not sure. So we did a lot of camping up the shore, the north shore of Minnesota, the Gunflint Trail, wilderness area, canoe country. Spent a lot of time with my grandparents, who were also great outdoors people, and my grandfather, and just a lot of fond memories growing up as a family, getting together with grandparents and stuff in the summer.
So your dad was originally from Minnesota.
Yep.
And during his time there, he was involved with the civil pilot training program in which he learned to fly. Do you have any memories of him talking about those early years?
Well, he was the youngest of a large family, I think of 10 siblings, and he was the only one to go to college. He went to the Duluth State Teachers College, which later on became UMD, University of Minnesota Duluth, which is where he met my mother. And it's also where he got involved initially in the cadet program. In order to, when he signed up, I think he went down to Wold Chamberlain Field in Minneapolis, which is the same place where George Herbert Walker Bush soloed in a Stearman. I don't know if my dad flew the same plane or not, but their paths didn't cross. He was Army Air Corps, and Bush, of course, was Navy.
What was your dad's experience during the war?
Well, it was interesting. I think perhaps because of his teacher background, even though he hadn't done much teaching, but after he got his pilot's training, and they went around Rantoul, Chanute Field, Rantoul, Illinois, and various fields in the south, Arizona, California, they were out there. He ended up back in Rantoul as a flight instructor, and that's where he spent the year. So he never really, he was involved in teaching other people to fly and everything, but didn't actually see any action.
Yeah. So do you feel from the earliest days he had a strong affinity for teaching?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I didn't realize, just to be quite honest, I never really realized just what a good teacher he was until I went to the memorial service for my dad at the Kent UCC church back in, it was the summer probably of, he died in 2004, so might have been that same summer then. Anyhow, they had this memorial at the church, and the beauty of it was that so many people, well, Dick Schwab was there, Maureen Payton was there, she was still alive, and many of the other people, Bill, I was listening to his interview, so I can just kind of add on that it is true that the industrial arts department was a close-knit group, and the different professors, Keith's, the Rotnams, I could name other names and everything, the different, Slesarski was in like pottery, and they all knew each other, through get-togethers and stuff like that, and it was a good group, and that spilled over, I think, too, with the students. Anyhow, this memorial service to my dad, some of his former students stood up and talked and praised him for his teaching and how much they appreciated his gift to them. So and the real treat after the service was Dick Schwab invited us all outside, and he had arranged for the air club or whatever, the students, to do a missing man formation, which they did just right over the church.
That's great.
Wow.
So how did he end up in Ohio?
Well, he was, we came to Ohio from University of Illinois, where he was, they had an aviation program there, and he was kind of a student. I think he got his master's degree there at Illinois, and he was doing some work with the aviation community there. The details, I'd been out to the airport a few times, and vaguely I can even remember maybe going up in a couple flights with him, but it's very vague. We lived initially in what they called Stadium Terrace, which was right next to the stadium there, and well, what was I going to say about the stadium? Well, the terrace, these were like buildings that were built during the war for the education of the students and everything going off to war now. So that was my dad got the offer to come to Kent to add to the growing program there, and the rest is kind of history. I think we got there in, what was it, 56, if I'm correct. You would know the dates better than me. You were great. I certainly admire your book. Thank you.
So when he came to Kent State, he operated or worked under 5 different presidential administrations. He was a program director, so he faced many financial and organizational issues.
Yeah.
Do you have any memories of those times?
Well, he didn't like to talk about him at home and everything, but I could tell he was under a lot of stress, I think, and I never knew the full details. I'm just a kid, but I do know that he took an early retirement he had told me later, I think, main reason was, the way he put it gently, was office politics. So I'm sure there were struggles.
Yeah. So of the other people in that department, such as Marshall Garrett in the shop, and Leonard Mack and Dick Schwab, do you have any memories of these people?
Garrett, I do. Yeah, and Schwab, definitely. And there were others like Ray Lockridge, who, unfortunately we weren't able to get into the book. But the reason perhaps that I knew the Lockridges so well is they lived just down, when we lived out at Twin Lakes on Sylvan Drive, the Lockridge house was just down from us, one house. And so we knew the family quite well. My youngest brother, Phil, was good friends with their son, Greg. And so it was more social than maybe I knew Ray that well through his work with my dad, but we were close.
Yeah. Do you have any specific memories of Dick Schwab in those early years?
Not a lot. I'd see him out at the airport, and I went back to Kent State years later to get my master's degree in geology, actually. And it might have been a little through, I don't know, some of my father's influence, perhaps. But I ended up, I had come fresh out of the Navy. I'm a Navy pilot. So I was able to supplement some of my school costs by being a flight instructor at Kent State. I got my flight instructor rating and did a little teaching there.
What years were those?
72, 74.
Wow.
Yeah. Some of my students' names. Jolene Kamara was a woman. She was the only woman that I knew in the flight program back then. I'm sure there are many more now, but she was my student.
Yeah. Do you know where she ended up?
Honestly, I've lost touch.
Yeah. Do you have any memories of James Smitty Smith or Eugene Ripple?
Yeah, both of them. Yeah. The names are very familiar, but then trying to figure out what they did and stuff like that. Yeah, they're very familiar. I'll read about them in the book.
Okay. What do you remember about your dad working on his PhD at Ohio State?
Oh, I can tell you stories. That was something else. So my dad came to Kent State. He had his master's degree and everything, but really to get ahead, and he had to get his PhD. I was at Ohio State finishing up my bachelor's degree, actually. I won't go into detail. I moved around a little bit too, but we ended up being roommates in an apartment there. And so he was working on his PhD for, at Ohio State, and then he would commute home on the weekends and then come back, and it was fun. And he did most of the cooking, which I appreciate. He's a good cook, by the way.
Oh, was he? Okay, good. Yeah, so the theme of his PhD work was the Kent State flight program.
Indeed.
So do you have any memories of his work specifically on that? What his impressions were doing that project?
Unfortunately, no. I do have his original dissertation, and I've read it. So that was how I learned about it.
Yeah. Do you have any memories of how students got to and from the airport? We're going to ask everybody that comes through.
A good question. Yeah. I mean, honestly, back in those days, and especially in the early days, like what you're looking at, the public transportation, I don't think was that good. So I have no idea. And they didn't have the campus bus service. I will tell you this, that even, the three professors, the Paytons, the Shaws, and the Ottersons, we literally lived on the wrong side of the tracks. Because when the trains would get going, there was no way you were going to get across that track in order to get over to the airport. So, and I remember growing up at night, too, on Walcott Avenue, and the trains at night, and they're bumping and crashing and stuff. It's not fun. So transportation was a bit of a problem, I would say.
So this would have been before like the Haymaker Parkway was in, so you had to cross the railroad tracks.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, I don't know. But it was always, you had to kind of, well, you got to a point where you knew sort of when the trains would be coming, so you'd sort of time it. Yeah, and those were long freight trains.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever go flying with your dad?
Yes. They had the Stinson Voyager, and I think it might have been a Piper Cub even that I flew in with him at Ohio State too when he was there. But my fondest memories of when they finished the Waco, and of course he took it up for a test ride. But then later I was able to fly front seat. The pilot, of course, sits in the back. I'm right there behind the engine. It's an open cockpit, and the roar of the engine, the feel of the wind, and even the smell of the engine and everything were just fantastic. And then when he put it into a loop, and all of a sudden I was looking up at the ground. I mean, that was just too much. That was the first time I'd ever experienced aerobatics. Of course, I went on to be a Navy pilot, so I have my own stories there, but that's not part of your book.
Well, no, but that's some curiosity. So, did those early experiences directly influence
Absolutely.
Did they?
There was some mild competition, mild ribbing as I paid for my way through college pretty much, well, I was supported at least through the Naval ROTC program. I was a regular ROTC, so I was never in the reserves. I went right into the regular Navy. And it was, at the time, it was paid the tuition and a little extra money for books and uniforms and stuff. But my dad would always kind of rib me like, well, did you ever think about the Air Force? No. I love the Navy.